Let's initiate the fifth plenary session of Global Procurement Summit 2021, themed Addressing COVID-19 related challenges in infrastructure projects. Let's welcome the session chair and the speakers on the digital dais. We welcome Ms. Elmas Arisoy, Practice Manager, Solution and Innovation in Procurement, World Bank, Washington, D.C., as the chair of the session. Welcome, ma'am. We welcome our speakers, Mr. Kanwal Preet, Director, Public Procurement Division, Ministry of Finance, Government of India. Welcome, sir. We welcome Mr. Binay Bhushan Mishra, VP and Head Supply Chain, Larson and Toubro Constructions, India. Welcome, Mr. Mishra. Mr. Ajay Kumar, Director, Dedicated Freight Corridor Corporation of India Limited.
Namaskar.
Welcome, Mr. Kumar. With this, I hand over the session to the session chair, Ms. Arisoy. Over to you, ma'am.
Good afternoon, dear distinguished panel members, dear participants. Welcome to the fifth session on addressing COVID-19 related challenges in infrastructure projects. We have a very distinguished panel members. Before leaving the floor to them, I'd like to make few introductory remarks. As you may know, World Bank's portfolio in South Asia is more than $50 billion, and about half of this portfolio is in India. And a very large percentage of this funding is committed for infrastructure projects. So obviously, this topic is extremely important for the World Bank as well. In India, the NIP, National Infrastructure Pipeline, is estimating that in the next 5 years, the infrastructure investments will need about $1.5 trillion. This is huge, and delivering such a large program will require very strong funding from domestic resources of the federal and state governments, and of course from multilateral development banks, bilaterals, private sector through PPP arrangements. But in addition to funding, it also requires a very strong execution capacity of the government and the contractors. What we have observed last year is that with the emergence of COVID-19 pandemic, there were many problems in procurement and implementation of infrastructure projects. According to a survey done by OECD, two of the COVID-19 related challenges faced by the governments as well as the contractors indicates that implementation delays and cost overruns are the top two challenges. For implementation delays, about 60% of the respondents highlighted this point, and about 40% of the respondents mentioned the cost overrun. So these are mainly due to nationwide lockdowns, closure of construction sites for extended periods, as well as supply chain disruptions. And we also know that in many countries, including in India, construction industry was already facing some liquidity crunches, even before COVID-19. And the pandemic situation has worsened it. Lockdowns, nationwide lockdowns, social distancing measures resulted in slowing down many economic activities, which means less economic activities means less revenue for the government. And this was also compounded by the need to divert the funds maybe from infrastructure sector to health sector, because the government's priorities have changed. Health became the priority for many governments. So they changed their priorities, and the plans for public investments, infrastructure investments have changed. So it means overall impact of all of these means that there was lesser number of business opportunities for the construction industry. And for the ongoing contracts, it means delayed payments or less resources for the ongoing contracts. We also witnessed unprecedented level of use of force majeure provisions in the contracts across the globe. Many contracts went into disputes because of unsettled claims and also somehow confusion about the accountability and responsibility of the contractual parties in relation to pandemic-related delays and cost overruns. Many of these are still unsettled, and we believe impact of these may be felt throughout the years to come. I'm sure the panelists and the audience are very well aware of the importance of construction sector in India. It is about 8% of India's GDP that comes from construction sector. And construction sector employs about 12% of the country's workforce. So any small contraction in this sector may have a major impact in the overall economy of the country. So addressing all these challenges will require both contract-specific, but also systemic and policy-level solutions. I'd like to share a few ideas about short-term solutions which can be implemented on existing contracts. For example, to achieve quick payments, milestones in the contracts can be restructured to allow quicker payments. Also, there could be advance payments on milestones. Another measure could be deferring the recovery of mobilization advance. Another measure could be extension of time as a result of COVID-19 and maybe awarding costs, additional costs due to changes in working environment. Of course, giving priority in resolution of existing claims and disputes, which will help maybe partially release some of the funds under these disputes. So these are just few ideas, and I believe we will have a chance to discuss these more during this session. And there are also few other ideas with regard to systemic solutions, policy level solutions for new procurements. For example, using bid securing declaration instead of monetary bid security. We know that many bidders are facing difficulties in obtaining the bid security as a cash or as a bank guarantee. And using bid securing declaration will have almost zero cost. And I just like to share an example. Recently, in a transport sector project, we have used this, the implementing agency using the bank-funded, implementing the bank-funded project, used this approach. And to our surprise, we have seen increased number of bidders. Normally, we used to receive 3-4 bids, and we have seen 15 bidders. So it means it increased the competition, and we expect to see very competitive prices with this approach. Another solution could be using escrow accounts dedicated to specific contracts, where there is a risk that funds may be diverted to other businesses of the contractors. Another solution could be improving the procurement process and bid evaluation process to detect the financially stressed firms upfront before the contract award stage. Of course, stronger contract management capacity is key, and it requires attention from the government. Another solution could be dynamic land acquisition management in line with the contract implementation plan. In many contracts, we see that delays in land acquisition is causing major delays in contract implementation. And if the land acquisition can be implemented, at least in line with the contract implementation plan, that will be a huge relief for the contractors. And lastly, but not the least, is the administrative dispute resolution mechanisms, such as using dispute resolution experts or dispute resolution boards, which will serve as a dispute avoidance boards. So these experts can resolve small issues before they become a dispute. And it will save the time and money for both parties, for contractual parties, contractors, and employers. And I'd like to quote a sentence from India's finance minister's budget speech at the beginning of this month. I like to read it just to make sure that we get it right. She said, to have ease of doing business for those who deal with government and carry out contracts, I propose to set up a conciliation mechanism and mandate its use for quick resolution of contractual disputes. This will instill confidence in private investors and contractors. This is wonderful news, and we are very much looking forward to see implementation of such mechanisms to reduce the burden on the contractors as well as on the government side. These are just few ideas from my side. Now I know that many governments of South Asian countries proactively came out with a number of relief measures to manage the impact of COVID-19 on infrastructure projects. And Mr. Kanwal Preet Singh, who has recently joined as Director of Procurement Policy Division for the government of India. He will make a presentation on such initiatives in India. I also like to mention that construction industry exhibited resilience, adaptiveness, and a very innovative approach during this crisis. And after the period of lockdown, we have seen that many activities already picked up slowly. Many infrastructure projects are going back on track. And it will be very interesting to hear the first-hand experience of L&T Limited as one of the top contractors of India. Similarly, contract supervision was an issue during this period. Because of lockdowns and travel restrictions, supervision of all ongoing contracts was a real challenge. Fortunately, there are many technological interventions in remote supervision, and using satellite imagery and drones. They were very helpful. And those interventions were already being used in some of the bank finance projects, mainly in conflict-affected fragile countries. And I'm pleased to note that Dedicated Freight Corridor Corporation of India will be sharing their experience of using drones for supervision of railway projects. So we will have 3 presentations, starting with Mr. Kanwal Preet Singh, and then Mr. Mishra, and then Mr. Kumar. Each presentation will be about 20 minutes, and then we will have question and answer session. So I'd like to thank all the participants, panelists, and audience. Now I'd like to invite Mr. Singh to take the floor. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, ma'am. And also, thanks for knowing that I have recently joined this department. So my presentation would be as long as my time in this department. Before I start with my presentation, I'd just like to mention, put a small thing on record that yesterday, Public Procurement Professional Association of India had somehow mentioned that Ministry of Finance is a stakeholder in that association. I'd just like to put it on record that this is factually incorrect. And now, before I begin my presentation, first of all, I'd like to thank Madam Arisoy for giving a very brief and complete overview of how COVID has impacted the infrastructure sector. I'll just share my screen. Please let me know when you are able to see my screen. So is my presentation visible?
Yes. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I would restrict my presentation to the initiatives taken by Procurement Policy Division of Department of Expenditure and those initiatives which are related to infrastructure sector. Ma'am has already given the background. I would skip this background. I'll say that the response of government to the COVID crisis in the infrastructure sector is primarily through Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan and through the planned investment infrastructure during budget 2021 and 22. This is not the exhaustive list. The response to the infrastructure investments of the government are beyond these two schemes. And I'm not listing out all those schemes, but these are the major initiatives taken right now. Now, coming to the initiatives taken by our division, the first initiative, as ma'am had suggested, one of the things that one of the reasons, one of the fallouts of COVID-19 was restricted availability of liquidity with the contractors. So to alleviate that, our division had issued instructions that government agencies should return the performance security in proportion to the supplies made or the works completed. This was, of course, subject to certain conditions. And we also reduced the amount of performance security in all contracts from the 5 to 10% range to around 3%. Bid security, as was also suggested by Madam Arisoy, has been now what our instruction says is that only provisions for bid security declaration should be there in bid documents till 31st of December 2021. So bid security is for all practical purposes not there in current tenders. Other initiatives like which were taken because of disruption of the supply chains. Now, the contracts which were supposed to be completed on or after 20th of February 2020 shall stand extended by 3 to 6 months. This was in cases where the force majeure conditions were applicable and valid. And these extensions to the contract would not attract any cost or penalty on the contractor. The other initiatives which we have taken recently is to promote local or domestic manufacturing, is that no global tenders up to rupees 200 crores are permitted. These tenders can be permitted only in special conditions with the prior approval of a competent authority. Now, I would like to end my presentation here by quoting the first line from this year's economic survey, and it is very apt in the current situation that saving a life that is in jeopardy is the origin of dharma. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kanwal Preet. Now we'd like to turn to Mr. Mishra from L&T. The floor is yours, sir. I think you are muted. Yes.
Thank you very much, madam. So let me share my screen. Is this screen
Yes.
visible?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. So before I start, I must thank AIMA for giving this opportunity to speak in this August forum. And as you know, Larson and Toubro, known as L&T, is a $21 billion Indian conglomerate having presence in infrastructure, energy, power, IT, defense, space, and recently in digital. 60% of our revenue comes from construction. What I'm saying is the experience what we went through during pandemic and after when the lockdowns were lifted may be true for all the people in infrastructure sector. So what I have done is I've taken the four main ingredients of any infrastructure project, like man, machine, material, and money. And what happened to these ingredients during pandemic, and what measures we took to mitigate the outcome or the problems we faced in these four ingredients. So I'll start my presentation. By the what images you are seeing on the screen are Mumbai Airport, the Statue of Unity, and the Medigata Barrage in Telangana state. So this is the flow of my presentation. Man, material, instead of machine, we'll discuss about how digitalization helped us to sail through this pandemic, and of course the money part. This is the most important slide. Before the pandemic, we had a workforce of 270,000 numbers in more than 900 projects spread across the country. When the lockdowns were declared, there was chaos and panic. Everybody wanted to go home. There was a very uncertain period, and some people could go home and some people could not go home. And there were, even though I'm saying 70,000 numbers, more than 100,000 workers were there in our different sites. And it was really a big job for us to look after them. During the pandemic, during the complete lockdown, there was no facility to get rations also. In spite of all these problems, our people could feed them, could look after them, could arrange their healthcare facilities. And when the government started these Shramik special trains and states sent bosses to take their own citizens of the state, many of the workers, they left the sites, and the strength further came down. And this went on for 4 or 5 months. There was no work, of course, in the sites, and there was a sense of despondency in the mind of the workers, mind of the staff, mind of the management as to what future holds. Then slowly, the infection came down, and then the sites were opened partially, and we took various measures to call back the workers. And by October, November, we had almost 200,000 workers back to our sites. And now, of course, we have more than 260,000 workforce in our different sites. So we need actually more numbers of workers, because recently we have back 2 marquee orders from a high-speed rail project. The measures what it took to call back the workers or to motivate them to come to our sites were like this. The states actually took initiative to give employment to their people or their workers through different schemes like Manarga and all. So in spite of that, the reverse migration has started, and workers are coming to the project sites. We formed teams in the site, and we had an Apex team which was headed by our CEO and MD, and we sent these teams to different states like West Bengal, Jharkhand, Odisha, Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, and Madhya Pradesh to act as workmen. And we also sent bosses from our sites to these states to bring the workmen to our site. We also had the Workmen Connect app, by which we knew where the workmen are, so we could approach their hometown very easily. And also we made videos to attract new workmen, and this worked. And we also sourced workmen from NGOs, ITIs, and our own CSTI, that is Construction Skill Training Institutes. So when the workmen went to their states, and when workers started to coming back to site, these are the not same set of workers. The workers who went back, actually 50% of them came back. The balance 50% were new workers. So they had to be trained on the job. And we also have, as I told earlier, Construction Skill Training Institute, which units are present in Chennai, Mumbai, Ahmedabad, Bangalore, Hyderabad, Kolkata, Delhi, and Cuttack, which churns out 14,000 candidates every year. So we sourced workmen from our CSTI, we sourced workmen from NGOs, and in CSTI, people get training through classroom training, simulation, e-learning modules, and they're trained in various trades like machinery, formwork, plumbing, etc. And these trainings are provided with free food. Their medical care is taken care of, and of course transport from CSTI to their dwelling place, and finally to the sites. So after the lockdowns were lifted, we could not have gone back the old way of working. So new project management SOPs were implemented. The pandemic has not gone actually. So we had to take care of sanitization in the canteen, in the site, and during transport. And we formed emergency response team in case some worker was infected. And there is always a communication channel open from top to bottom, bottom to top. This was one of the major reasons why workmen stayed disciplined during the pandemic. There are some of the images. I don't know why the images are not coming. Yeah. So when the lockdowns are lifted, they are the new normal. How people are being admitted into the job sites, during transport, and of course we constructed facilities for isolation and quarantine, for contactless attendance, and some other measures to see that the safety protocols are maintained. Because the workers were new, we had to repeatedly and continuously give safety pep talks, so that some of the more risk-prone areas like structural erection, scaffolding, plant and machinery, the worker who are working, they get sensitized about the requirement and the risk involved for safe working. And all the time, safe distance, social distancing, and sanitization were maintained. Now, before I come to material, the most important part during pandemic was to keep the workers who were stranded in sites without any work, without anything to do, motivated for a period of 4 or 5 months. So what we did was communication. There was top to bottom, bottom to top, keep themselves engaged, and there was, as I was telling you, a sense of despondency. There was very uncertain time. Nobody knew when they'll be able to go back to their families. So they are difficult times, but hopefully this is a thing of the past now. The sites have started working in full strength, and up to we see almost 100% workers are now present in our sites. Now, if we come to materials, during the pandemic, when it was in peak, all the factories were shut down except for steel plants. So when the lockdown was lifted and sites slowly limped back to normalcy, there was a huge scarcity of material. Actually, the cement plants were shut down, so cement prices went through the roof, and cement was not available. But when slowly the cement plant has started working, the cement prices are now somewhat stabilized. But in case of steel, the reverse happened. The steel prices, because the steel plants are working and they're declared as essential commodity, so prices were low when the lockdown was lifted. But slowly, because of the pent-up demand, and there was some shortage of iron ore, and international demand went up, and many of the steel plants are not working in Europe and in other parts of the world, USA and all. The steel prices are now, I think, all-time high. So this actually affects us. We have a mixture of fixed price contract, and we have government contracts, and we have a private clients. So in case of fixed price contracts, the price increase is a big dent for the P&L of those sites. In case of government contracts, mostly the prices are linked with the movement of wholesale price index. Of course, the wholesale price index doesn't always reflect the true price movement on the ground. So actually, the contractors do not want to earn money through speculation. But if a better mechanism can be found out by which the WPI can reflect the correct movement of the prices, it will be better for both the client and the contractor. We also subscribe to the Atmanirbhar call given by the Government of India, and we are calibrating our import from China and other countries. And recently there were some declaration from Ministry of Commerce in changes in import-export procedures, and some more quality control measures have been put in for import of steel items from outside the country. So all these things are in a short-term basis affecting the execution of the contracts. But we are with the government for making self-reliant India. We are actually ramping up our capacity in fabrication in one or two upper locations. We are also trying to manufacture some of the equipments which are importing in our Kanwal factory. During the pandemic, we could not go to the factories for inspection, but some of the equipments are very urgent, so we did the inspection virtually, and the factory audits and all also were done through virtual mode. The transportation or logistics became a nightmare during the lockdown. I'll show you a graph where some of the states are in hot zone, some of the states were in orange zone, and some of the states are in green zone. So movement of material between sites became between states and between sites became very, very difficult. Moreover, in international market also, the freight charges went up very high because of paucity of vessels coming in, and all these things added to the price. So this is the image of how WPI has moved and how prices have moved during this time. So the green line is the price movement. The green line is the index movement, and the blue line is the price movement. So the gap between these two is the loss to the contractor. Sometimes the index is more and the prices are less. So at that time the contractor gains. But recently what has happened is the prices have moved exponentially, which the index has to catch up. These are some of the other commodities. The price movements during the and after the lockdowns are over, during the lockdown and after the lockdowns are over. We do hedging to mitigate the price movement, but not 100%, and hedging also comes at a cost. So these are some of the images how remote factory acceptance tests were carried out. These are the employees of the supplier factory, and they carried out the test, and this is witnessed by our clients, and in fact some of the government clients also agreed to do the inspection through this mode, which is a great thing. So this is a picture of the distribution of the red zone, the green zone, and the orange zone. In the case of red zone, no material can move, and a lot of restrictions were there. We had to coordinate with the supplier and the state governments to give the permits for movement of the material. Now, of course, these restrictions are not there. So during the pandemic, when travel were restricted and person-to-person contact was difficult, so we took help of digital enablers to discuss with our staff, discuss with the suppliers, and we did have the one of the big webinar where 20,000 of our staffs attended, when our chairman and our CEO and MD addressed the staffs. Every year we have a program of inducting trainees. We call them graduate engineering trainees, and 1,500 to 1,000 to 1,500 people, they come to join the company from different campuses of the country. And this time they were inducted virtually, and all the leadership, they spoke to them, they tried to motivate them, gave the future to them, and then they're inducted to various verticals. We also employed one digital tool called Workman Induction and Skills Availability, which is a repository of the workman, and in which skill set he is trained, or which skill set or which trade he can do. And with this, we match the requirement of our different sites, and then the workman is posted to those sites. So this is a very, very useful tool. And we also have 11,000 of our equipment working in sites connected with IoTs. So remotely we can monitor their productivity, their movement, and we have also equipment to monitor the diesel consumption and all this. There are some more digital tools what we have employed during pandemic. We did a house through 3D printing. It is a 700 square feet house, and we also used tools for virtual reality and augmented reality for training and safety, material handling, and other activities in the site. We also have RFID. This is a chip which is attached to the helmet, so that we can monitor the movement of the workers, we can monitor the productivity, and we can also see where the crowding is taking place and take preventing measures. Now we come to the money part. So April to June, and of course till July, 5 months, we took care of more than 70,000 workers. We paid them wages, food, medical facility. We have 30,000 employees, more than 30,000 employees. Wages are paid in full without any inflow of revenue. So the working capital was under severe strain, and the project also slowed down after the lockdown. Over also it was limping basically. Now of course it is at 75%. We can always say 75% of the full scale operation. It is at 75% now. But some of the clients like DFCC, they reviewed our milestone payments and helped releasing some payment, which was a big help for our working capital. We also took up a lot of cost reduction measures, like renegotiating our contract with suppliers, then effectively utilize virtual tools for training and development, and also in fact inspection and audits in factories. We went for vendor financing, and we talked to our suppliers, big suppliers, for extended credit period. Non-critical capital expenditures were converted to OPEX, and say travel and establishment cost had to come down because some of the people are working from home. So during the pandemic, we did some of the big things also, like launching of this TBMs, and 2 TBMs are launched in the Bangalore metro job. We also commissioned this solar energy job and this hydel energy, Singoli Batware hydel plant was commissioned. We did a residential building, very high-rise residential building during the pandemic. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mishra. This was a very interesting presentation. Actually, I had no idea that workers who left their homes didn't come back. I thought they are coming back, but you had to have maybe 50% of your workforce from completely new workers. So it's a big challenge.
India from states to give them employment through schemes like Mandarga and all. There is some rural employment scheme. So many of the workers stayed in their respective states. So we have to motivate new workers to come. So it is now 50-50.
Yes, and train them.
Yes,
I think that's a big task, big challenge. Thank you.
We have training institutes. And we also do the on-the-job training of these workers.
Thank you. Now let's move to the third panelist, Mr. Kumar from DFCCIL. Floor is yours, sir.
Good afternoon. I'm Ajay Kumar. I welcome to all my fellow participants and the participant for this workshop, Global Procurement Summit. And I wanted to tell you how we move our project of DFCCIL during the period of COVID. So this is our project which we are doing at present, Eastern and Western Dedicated Freight Corridor project. Western Corridor is along the western alignment of India, around 1500 kilometer, passing from Dadri to JNPT port and near Bombay, and Eastern Corridor from Ludhiana to Dankuni, and out of which we are executing at present from Ludhiana to Sonnagar, and from Sonnagar onwards, the project will be taken up under PPP. So both Eastern and Western dedicated project we were executing before COVID, and all over construction was going on or in full swing. And some of the targets were also there on March 20. But suddenly lockdown was there, and sudden lockdown was imposed on 20th March. For the sake of information, that we have around 2,843 route kilometers. Yeah.
Ajay sir,
Yeah.
sir, I have a small request, please. Sorry for interruption. Sir, your presentation is also not coming full screen. If you can, please have it on the presentation mode. We can still see your panel on the left.
It is not visible.
No, sir, it is visible, but it is not on the full screen mode, the presentation mode, sir. So going forward, we may have a little challenge in reading it in this mode. If it is difficult, then we can also upload it from our end.
I have to check.
Should we do that? Can we upload it from our end?
If it is possible, then you can do.
It is definitely possible. So AIMA console will upload it. You can stop the screen share. And this is perfectly fine. It is coming in full screen. And now you can instruct the console to move on whenever it is needed. Please carry on. Please carry on. Thank you so much.
So now we cannot move. I cannot move.
No, sir, you won't be able to. You just need to say next.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
So
all right.
we should start again. I was telling that we are presently executing Eastern and Western dedicated freight corridor. These are two corridors. One on eastern side, eastern belt of India, and another is in western side. Total length is around 2,800 kilometers, and our works, all contracts were awarded, and we were executing work all along the alignment. But suddenly on 20th March, lockdown was imposed, and all work put on standstill. So we have to move forward. And next. So our total sanctioned cost of the project was 1,000 crore, out of which cost of land was around 18,000 crore and construction cost of rupees 73,000 crore. The status of the project as on March 20 was that we have already invested around 44,000 crore on capex on construction project, and on December now our position is that we have spent around 51,000 crore. Our physical progress at that time was 71%, now it is 80%. Financial progress on March 20 was 61%, and now it is 70%. And in December, we have completed Bhavapur Khurja section of 351 kilometer and Rewari Madar 306 kilometer on Western Corridor. And these both sections were inaugurated by Prime Minister in the last month in December as well as in January. And now trains are running in Bhavapur Khurja. We are almost running around 20 to 25 trains daily. And our speed is coming around 60 to 65 kmph for goods train, which is almost 2 to 3 times average of Indian Railway train which are running at present. So what I want to tell you that during the COVID also, we continue to work, and as you can see that our monthly capex was there, but there was some slowdown in April, May, but finally we could achieve good progress in September, October, November, and December. And finally, we spent around 7,000 crore during this period on our project EDFC and WDFC. This is a huge amount, and it shows that we were executing project during this period. Continuously we were doing, and we were doing a lot of innovations, how to move and how to move the project in the direction and with the restrictions imposed by the government to avoid spread of COVID. So as you know that lockdown was imposed on 25th March, all activities stopped, all movement of staff, labor, etc. were stopped, and whatever labor we were having in labor camp, they were remained stranded at that locations, and we have no option but to keep those labor safe from COVID, and we have to ensure that all safety precautions provided by the government, imposed by the government, has to be implemented on work site. So what action we took so that adequate precautions are available? That what we did that we circulate the guideline issued by Ministry of Finance and Health for precautions taken for social distancing, sanitation, and cleanliness. We ensure that all our labor sites have adequate facility for fooding, lodging facility, so that labor in the camps are not perturbed and they are at least looked after appropriately, so that there should not be any panic situation. Here I want to say that I want to put my appreciation for our contractors. We are having very large contractors just like Tata, L&T, Alstom, GMR, who were executing our project, and they ensured that all facilities in the labor camps are there, as including those which has been provided by the Ministry of Health considering the COVID. And they provided isolation facilities, medical facilities, all required. They also provided facilities for temperature recording, isolation facility, and all facilities which can keep the staff happy. And they provided all messing facilities so that the staff can get proper food during the lockdown period when there was no movement. What we did during this period, because there was no movement of labor and there was no movement of material and no work was permitted, what we did that during this period, we utilized for finalization of various issues related to design and variations, so that whatever work can be done from home, we try to do it, and we did, and so that all pending issues related to design and variations were cleared, which help us to release payment to the contractor to improve their cash flow, because they were already stressed because there was no work and labor was there and they have to look after them, and no movement was there. Basically, a lot of machinery which were mobilized was there standing at the work site, and lot of investment were idle. Basically, the machines and material, all manpower were idle, but they have to fed and they have to looked after appropriately, and to ensure that work site are safe from COVID point of view. Although there were some incidents that some staff got infected, but our all contractors and all DFCCL officials and PMC officials took special care and provide them adequate medical facilities so that they don't feel isolated and they get proper health precautions and close supervision. What we did that because we have all PMC contractors, and we also use virtual platform for regular interaction with the contractor and PMC, so that all are involved in the project, because we should not let them down, that nobody is watching them, and we continue to monitor progress, design review, variation issues, and all other pending issues with the contractors and PMC, so that things go on moving. We also issued notice to the contractor through PMC that all sites are safe and secure, because it was a sudden lockdown. We have to ensure that our work sites are safe and no unsafe situation should take place. We were constructing bridges, we were constructing earthwork, and we were doing the parallel work along the railway alignment also. So we have additional requirement to ensure safety, that there should not be any dangerous situation for the existing running track of railway line. So we took those precautions. We also instructed to contractor through PMC to ensure Supervision implementation, so that so that contractor staff are safe and safe situation is there. We also provide training to the staff to avoid spread of COVID. Because physical file movement was stopped immediately, what we did, we implement e-office for regular office work, so that our decision making system is in place and no work is held up for want of office not opened. So we implemented e-office and regular decision making was done through e-office. We also issued notice to provide status of project on the date of lockdown, so that we are aware about the status of the project, what are the manpower available, what are the equipment available at project site. And we also took this status on regular measure, weekly basis, daily basis, so that we are aware where labor is there, where labor is not there. We permitted working of PMC and contractor staff from home, and we also issued communication protocol during the COVID period and revised communication protocol, and we accepted email communication as official medium of communication, and we dispensed the requirement of submission of hard copy within 48 hours. We ensure that adequate facilities are available for food and lodging in the labor camp. Salary to the labor was also provided during the lockdown period, and we ensure that the staff get the salary, labor get the salary, and so that they are well looked after. And no labor was removed from the work site during lockdown period, and only after that labor specials started moving, the labor started moving to their home places, then our labor started reducing. Initially we were having at all project site around 2 lakhs labors, but after that movement started, we also, the labor remained only around 30%. Around 70,000 labor were there after the movement of labor started. And now again, that labor started coming back in the month of August and September. We also instruct all officials of DFCC, PMC and contractor and labor to download Arogya Setu app, so that their status with respect to COVID is always known and available to everybody. So these were the precautions we ensured at site. That here I want to tell you that our project is machine intensive, and we were using a lot of machines for execution of projects, so labor were minimal. But for that also we have to ensure that adequate precautions are taken. So we ensure that the labor should follow social distancing, use of face masks, hand gloves and sanitizer. Temperature screening was also done at site. Hygiene and sanitation of work area was also ensured. We also display the locations of hospitals which are treating COVID, and as instructed by Home Ministry and Health Ministry, that prohibition of use of tobacco, gutka by workers was also implemented at site. After 2020, Government of India permitted start of construction activities and with permission from district authorities. Here I wanted to tell you that once the permission government allowed, we approached to district administration to give permission, and district administration as well as state government were very proactive, and they provided us clearance quite early, and they asked us to ensure that all safety precautions issued by the government should be followed, and this permissions was granted expeditiously. But there were some issues. Although permission was there, but initially there was restrictions of travel of staff inter-district, interstate, and limited staff was permitted per vehicle. Most of the manufacturing unit were still closed, affecting availability of material required for construction. So these were issues. Although permission was there, but work progress was not smooth, because some of the material which were already available on site we could use, but as manufacturing industry was not open, so supply chain was affected. For DFCCL project, it involves civil construction, electrical works, SNT works, all type of materials it may be cement, it may be steel, it may be concrete sleeper, it may be rail. For signaling point of view, it may be signal, it may be electronic interlocking, lot of software item, transformer, etc. were required for construction. And some of the material was to come from foreign countries. And here I wanted to tell you that corona disease was in such a manner that it was somewhere it was in one country, somewhere it was in one country. When our lockdown was imposed in March, there was already a few countries which are already under lockdown. But when their lockdown released, but in India lockdown was there. So there was a continuous problem of supply of material which affected the progress. But we allow the contractor to change the manufacturer unit and allow them that they can take material from other source so that the supply chain is maintained. But initially 2 to 3 months, there was a problem of material also. And as I told you that restrictions of movement, there were red zone restrictions of any work was not there. After that, the containment zone came. So with lot of restrictions was there, but I want to tell you that DFCCL took a lot of initiative, lot of assistance was provided to the contractor, and we ensured that work is progressing as fast as possible. For smooth progress of the work, we took following actions so that work can progress smoothly. What we have done that we require the inspection of material at manufacturer site by the PMC and DFCCL official. What we did, because movement was not permitted, we accepted the material on manufacturer certificate. Contractual payment were released provisionally without clearance of RFI by PMC because movement was not feasible. We also conducted drone survey at various work sites to know the status of the progress and to review the progress of the project. I wanted to tell you that we conducted 2 missions of the World Bank during that period, and World Bank team also did not go to the site, and they reviewed the progress of work based on the drone survey. PMC was also permitted RFI without verification, without witnessing various QA and QSC tests at site. We also provide relaxation regarding inspection of safety measures at site by PMC. Here, I also want to tell you that Government of India and through Ministry of Finance, Public Procurement Division took a lot of initiative so that contractor in infrastructure sector get benefited and they can continue to work. And DFCCL also has taken a lot of steps for payment, release of payment to the contractor so that their cash flow is not stressed and they can work smoothly. What we did, that IPC was released without completion of stage. So because there was restrictions and we allowed payment without completion of stage under clause 14.6 of FIDIC Yellow Book. We allow release of retention money against bank guarantee. We as per the guidance of ministry, we reduce the recovery of retention money from 10% to 6%. As instructed by the Government of India, we release the performance security proportionate to the work done up to March 20. We also deferred the recovery of mobilization advance, and we also reduced the rate of recovery of mobilization advance. We also provided extension of time to the contractor on delay on account of COVID. 3 to 6 month delay we permitted without any cost implication on the contractor side. We also reduced performance security from 5% to 3% as advised by Ministry of Finance. Acceptance of material on manufacturer certificate. Acceptance of imported material based on third-party inspections on manufacturer certificate. We also allowed that third party, which is there at the country from where the material is coming, we engage that party for inspection and supply inspection and passing the material for supply to the DFCC site. We also accepted bid security declaration in place of bid security. We also provide relaxation in factory acceptance test, and we divided the cost center in such a manner that contractor cash flow is benefited. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kumar. Very comprehensive presentation. Thank you so much. So we have heard from all three panelists. We have heard the policy department of the government, how the policy is approaching to this crisis, how the implementers are approaching to this crisis, and how the private sector is approaching, and how they are coming up with measures, with complementary measures to overcome these difficulties. I see that in every crisis there is some opportunity, and here I think all parties use this as an opportunity and advance their work as much as they can. Of course, there are issues, there are difficulties, but I'm so pleased to see that things didn't stop, work didn't stop. You were able to progress both from the government side, from the private sector side. I think challenges are addressed by coming together. Speakers mentioned that they had regular meetings. Mr. Kumar mentioned that they had regular meetings with their contractors. I think that's very important because sometimes, especially in this type of times, maybe just looking at the contract provisions is not enough. Coming together and understanding each other's difficulties will help to resolve these issues. And I was also very pleased to hear that electronic platforms were used by all parties at different instances. Maybe a year ago, it was not possible, and I was observing that in the bank, also in the governments, there was some reluctance, there was some resistance to use like this type of virtual meetings. We had similar summits before, it was all face-to-face, but now we are having exactly same level of discussions through virtual means. So I am, in conclusion, I'd like to say that all parties were able to adapt to the difficulties, and were able to develop measures. And also, it's interesting to hear that even though field work suffered some delays, other type of work which can be done virtually, like design reviews and other type of tasks, were continued. Both government and the private sector were able to adapt to virtual or home-based work, which is very good. And also, I see that various cost reduction measures were taken, both on the private sector side and on the government side. So these are my quick notes. And I see that there are many questions already. If it is okay with you, I'd like to start with the questions. But before we move to questions, anyone would like to add any points, any of the panel members? Mr. Sindh, anything from your side?
No, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Mr. Mishra?
Yeah, when I was hearing to Mr. Ajay Kumar, I am grateful to him, the help they have rendered to L&T during this pandemic, and the cooperation between DFCC and L&T actually is very good. We are doing major contracts in WDFCC and EDFC. So it was a good thing to hear from him also. The contractors are doing good job there.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Anything would you like to add, Mr. Kumar, before we move to questions?
Not at this stage.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I'd like to move to questions. First question is to Mr. Kanwal Preet. What opportunities has COVID-19 provided to bring continuous improvements to public procurement landscape in India beyond COVID-19? It's a very broad question, but
It's a very broad question, but I would restrict my answer to very specific fields of public procurement. I will not touch upon HR or something which L&T and the FCCIL have both indicated. As far as public procurement is concerned, we see greater acceptance of e-procurement processes, greater acceptance of flexibility of contracts, and we also hope to see better results in dispute resolution, as already Finance Minister has indicated in the budget speech and which you had indicated. Each crisis gives you new learning points, and whatever happens, a change happens, and that the things never remain the same. So the things will keep on improving, and I think the biggest takeaway from COVID-19 would be consideration of the economic crunch which the contractors were facing, and almost an immediate response from Ministry of Finance to alleviate their problems by reducing performance guarantees and by reducing performance security and bid security, which both these institutions who are partners in this presentation have used. So I would stop my answer to the question number 1 at that. With your permission, I'll take up the question number 2.
Yes, please. Application of these relaxations under the externally aided projects. Yes, please.
So as far as our instructions are concerned, they don't look into the source of funding, as far as they are otherwise compliant to the other instructions of the other ministries. But we don't look at sources of funding for these projects to be applicable to the initiatives which we have taken during the COVID period. Thank you.
Thank you very much. On this one, I like to make a point for the World Bank funded projects. If there is any conflict between the national instructions, national legislation, and the World Bank policy and procedures, according to the financing agreement, the World Bank procedures will prevail. Of course, we have to look at each situation to understand the divergence between the two. But the principle is that according to the financing agreement, the bank procurement policy and procedures will apply. We can have a separate conversation on that.
Yeah, that's a big debate, yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. There are also multiple questions on for Mr. Mishra. One is, how do you manage government contracts during lockdowns?
So, as Mr. Kumar pointed out, when there's a complete lockdown, there is no activity going on. And we have given letters, or we have given notice to our clients, government clients, saying that work has been stopped for this, but force majeure clause has not been invoked yet in any of our contracts. We have given notice, and as you pointed out, we have got extension, contract extension. So there is no dispute at present. It is same with all the government clients.
Actually, during the lockdowns, some of the contractors were able to do the difficult jobs related to transportation contracts. I remember watching a documentary where in big cities, when everybody was at home, contractors were able to work on the metro construction or some railway construction, even water supply networks within the city center. So under normal circumstances, these would require maybe stopping the traffic, will cause disruptions in traffic. But due to lockdown, I think this has become easier.
Yeah, actually, in my presentation also I showed, we launched 2 TBMs, tunnel boring machine, underground tunnel boring machine during pandemic. We commissioned the Hydel project, in Uttarakhand, which is a very difficult thing to do during pandemic. Yeah, some of the very complicated and complex jobs were done during the pandemic, but there were very few. Let me tell you, there are very few,
Yes,
and jobs within urban area and all are not possible.
exactly. The second question for you is, how did you find a way out, especially in the wake of price fluctuations and avoid disputes?
So, as I pointed out, we have a mixture of a fixed price contracts and contracts with price variation clause, and there are star price contracts with some of the private clients. In case of star price contracts, we are compensated in full. If the price fluctuation is there, we compensated in full because mostly the negotiation is done along with the client. So, if there is a price fluctuation, it is they are compensated in full. In case of firm price contract, we have no recourse. The client has also taken a risk in giving the firm price contract. The prices come down again, the prices go up, we lose. But in case of contracts where there is a price, in firm price contract, the mitigation measures what we take is we hedge major commodities like copper, aluminium, and all these things we hedge. So to minimize the loss, and also foreign exchange also we hedge, but not 100%. To the maximum extent in firm price contract, we start hedging from the day one. In case of contract with price variation clause, which we have with mostly government clients, it hurts when the WPI does not reflect the true movement of the prices. In those instances, we approach the client to have a mutually agreed solution. But this, we can only do that much. We can only approach the client. But mostly in firm price contract, where the risk is much more, we do the hedging.
Thank you. Thank you. There are a few more questions to you. With your experience of Workman Connect Up during COVID, would a formal digital labor platform at state level, facilitated by state or NGO, be a consideration for future?
Absolutely. Absolutely. They have some sort of platform, I think is available, but the platform which has been developed by our in-house people is too good. We have a very big repository of all the workmen who are working with us, what are their skill sets, where they're working, and suppose we start a new job, then immediately we know who are the people whom to send to this new job, what are the skill sets required in the new job, and who are the people having those skill sets. So if we have a very big mega platform initiated by the government, it will help all the contractors and the workmen also. They'll get gainful employment.
Exactly. Yes. Another question for you. Have you participated in government procurement during COVID? Were there any special clauses related to COVID-19 and force majeure that you were particular about as a contractor?
Personally, I did not come across any procurement from government platform, but this question I'll park for now. I'll check up with other verticals if they have done some procurement government platforms. This I can reply at a later date.
Thank you. Okay.
I'll check up and come back on this.
Thank you. There is now questions for Mr. Kumar. Did you pay any extra payment to your contractors during COVID period as extra costs were incurred by them?
Yeah, here I would like to tell you that Government of India declared that pandemic is a force majeure situation. And according to force majeure, this was part of the natural calamity. And for that matter, if it is a natural calamity, everybody has to bear his cost, and he has to work in such a manner that losses are minimized. So as DFCCIL, as a client, we have the responsibility to our staff and PMC staff. We have paid their salary. We have we have paid their salary. And we expect that contractor will try to reduce his expenditure to the extent possible. Although there was instructions that labor should be kept at site and they should be looked after appropriately. But we didn't pay anything on that account. But what we did, that we did lot of initiative on financial issues beyond the contract, because our contract does not provide that we can break the cost center. We can reduce the recovery of mobilization advance. We can defer the mobilization advance, and we provided a reduction in retention money rate of recovery. So all these issues we provided beyond the contract with a modification in the contract to help the contractor, so that they, whatever help we can provide within the framework of the contract and whatever guidelines Ministry of Finance issued, so to take the benefit of those guidelines, we try to help the contractor, so that they are also facilitated and our work is also not suffered. But for that account, whatever labor was there with the contractor and what extra precautions they took on account of social distancing, sanitization, isolation, etc., we didn't pay. Here, I also like to tell you that Government of India also declared that any expenditure on COVID can be covered under corporate social responsibility, and they permitted that even if we deposit the money in the Prime Minister Care Fund, that will be considered as a spend on CSR activity. I was also expecting that all companies will come forward and use their CSR fund for such type of expenditure, so that they can look after the labor from health perspective and safety perspective. I also want to tell you that our all contracts have C provision, and all from the C provision, all these precautions, except because this was a special disease which was not covered earlier. Otherwise, medical facilities at work site, first aid, doctor, ambulance, etc., were provided in the contract. So nothing extra on that account. But I can tell you that it is a question of that food without any work and staying facilities, and some, in case there was some COVID case, he has to be treated, he has to provide medical assistance. That expenditure was done by the contractor, and we couldn't compensate on that account.
Thank you. Thank you very much. There is another question for you with regard to use of technology. So the question says, other than using drones, what other kinds of technological interventions did you undertake to carry out remote supervision?
So here I will like to tell you that drone is a basically survey, and it can be used to at higher level to know the progress of work, but it cannot be used for release of payment or inspection, or for that matter. And it is basically to assess the what type of work are going on and what is the status of the work. As you know, if it is an infrastructure project has to be done physically. Somebody has to go to the site, and some machine has to go to the site, some labor has to go to the site, and then only he can do the work. And if we want that contractor labor will go, then PMC should also go to the site and supervise the work, and DFCC staff should also go to the site. As advised by the ministry, we are attending office from April. Although we have taken a lot of precautions, but we are all attending office from the month of April, and coming to the office and attending. Although we permitted, the first good point from these COVID is that now this virtual platform meeting is rampant, and there is no need of physical meeting. So lot of expenditure on travel, and then meeting extra expenditure of food and tea, snacks, etc. has reduced. And but I agree that physical inspection cannot be dispensed with, and it has to be there, because work cannot progress unless somebody has to physically work. It cannot be done through computer. So whatever measure we can take, it can help us to satisfy that inspection requirement is there, because whatever dispensation we provided to the contractor, that we accepted the material on manufacturer certificate, we didn't send the party to inspect manufacturer premises, but we took that condition that whatever material is supplied by the manufacturer, it has to be tested at later stage, and it has to meet the requirement which is given in the contract. So I personally feel that although there may be some method, but physical inspection cannot substitute virtual inspection. That is my viewpoint.
Thank you very much. Actually, there was a question you already answered very comprehensively. The question was whether physical supervision or remote supervision is better, and why. And I see you provided very comprehensive answer. about the need for physical supervision for certain type of works. There is another question which says, did DFCCIL complete project within the budgeted estimate? If not, what was the cost overrun and approximately how much was it?
Here I want to tell you that our construction cost is 68,000 crore and 5,000 is interest during construction. So our 68,000 cost is a completion cost. So this cost is completion cost, and we still feel that we will be able to complete our project within that cost. Whatever escalation is there, it is on that account, land cost. Our land cost from 8,000 to has increased to around 20,000 crore. So major increase in land cost. Otherwise, we have already provided escalations, some variations, etc., and contingency cost in completion cost, and we hope that we will be able to complete our project within the sanctioned cost of 68,000 crore, which is our completion cost for construction for EDFC and WDFC. There is no cost overrun on that account. Whatever cost overrun is there, it is there, but it has already been accounted for because we have taken consideration that there will be some WPI variation will be there. So cost variations on account of price escalation plus variations we have assumed, and within that we will be able to complete the project.
Very good. Thank you very much. There is a question about opening. It is to DFCCIL and also L&T. The question is, what kind of opening up precautions did you take after lockdown got over?
I think
Mr.
I presented during my presentation. I did present what precautions we took while we opened the job sites for workmen to come. We managed social distancing in transportation. We had SOPs to take care of the sanitation protocol. We had transport arrangement where one man sit in one seat, and the social distancing was maintained. We get a lot of pep talk. We give a lot of pep talk to workers to follow the health protocol, which is issued by Ministry Health. So all these precautions were taken, and we had also constructed isolation facilities, quarantine facilities in our labor camps. So all these precautions were taken. We opened the site. We had emergency teams formed in each site to take care of any infected workmen. So these precautions were taken.
Thank you. Thank you very much. There is another question to Mr. Mishra, to L&T. The question is how L&T is planning to manage the financial constraints, especially on liquidity, and has COVID slowed down the participation of L&T in new projects?
As I mentioned in my presentation, clients like DFCC and all did make payment to us during the COVID. There were rationalized milestone payments and big payments we received from DFCC, so which helped us to mitigate our workflow problem, cash flow problem. There was some deferment of salary of senior staffs to manage the liquidity. And so far as taking orders are concerned, the Q3 is the best order inflow in the history of L&T. We got almost about $10 billion worth of orders in Q3. And we have an order backlog of 350,000 crores, which I don't know how much it amounts in dollar terms. But this is the all-time high order backlog which L&T is having now. So there is absolutely no problem of taking fresh orders and new orders. Thank you.
Yes, actually, I remember seeing L&T's name under the World Bank funded projects in water sector, in energy sector, in transport. Yes. So L&T is one of the active bidders, active contractors in implementation of World Bank funded projects.
I am not able to tell what are the complete measures take to alleviate the liquidity problem. But what I came to mind, I told, but there might be many other measures being taken by our finance department. Maybe I'll check up and come back on this.
Thank you. There's an interesting question to you, which is whether reduction in labor force will result in change in construction methodology, which is more mechanized?
To the extent possible, we have mechanized our construction and execution in contract. But we are going big way for digitalization. So remote monitoring of productivity, remote monitoring of equipments, and all these things are being carried out. But we cannot substitute labor 100%. There will be a problem for getting labor, and I think as the time moves, more and more things will be mechanized. But at present, whatever could be mechanized has been mechanized.
Okay, thank you. So you are saying that COVID situation did not change much the efforts
So far
of
as
using more.
mechanized is concerned, but it changed so far as usage of digitalization is concerned. It gave a lot of opportunity, or as is a necessity, is mother of invention. Like, so, we adopted a lot of digital techniques, digital tools for in our execution of projects.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I see that the questions are so far are all of, I think we covered all of them. So I'd like to thank the panel. Before we conclude, if you have any last words, maybe we can start with Mr. Singh, if you like, Kanwal Preet Singh.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I have nothing more to add. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Mishra, any final words?
Yeah, I enjoyed the panel discussion, and it was really a learning experience for me also. So it was a good thing. Yeah, I enjoyed.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Kumar?
I would like to add one item. During the lockdown period, it provided us opportunity also, because the train was not running and road traffic was not there. So we could do a lot of work on road project, construction of road over bridges, wherever block was required for railway line, we could get easily, and we could do those work which were difficult in normal time were done easily. So with that, I want to close. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I also must say that I really enjoyed the conversation, even though I have been working on India for the last 3-4 years. And I have been on daily contact with my team in Delhi with regard to infrastructure projects. This was very informative for me, hearing directly from the implementing agencies, from policy department, and also from the contractor, and hearing the perspective, different perspectives of each parties was very helpful, very informative. Thank you very much. And also, before we close, I'd like to thank AIMA for bringing us together, and looking forward to other sessions and maybe other summits in the coming years. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you.
Ms. Arisoy, our sincere thanks to you for your presence and chairing the session so well. Thanks to our learned panel of speakers, Mr. Kanwal Preet Singh, Mr. Mishra, Mr. Ajay Kumar. Ladies and gentlemen, with this, we come to an end of our plenary session 5. Let's have a round of applause for all our wonderful panel members here.